early on, I embraced the failure of improv and the struggle of improv and leaned into it because I knew I was getting better and I knew that I was getting more comfortable with the non-judgment of myself. And I talked to a lot of leaders about using the yes of improv, which is not just a word, it's a posture. When we're a yes person, we're open, we're inviting, we have energy, it's positive energy, we connect.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fearful Giants, the podcast that's getting loud about something most leaders never talk about out loud, their fear. I'm Clay Stelzer, executive coach and founder of 1560. And every week I sit down with a founder, a CEO, or an executive leader, talk about the stuff they don't put on LinkedIn. And we have a special one for you today. My friend Jeff Ash is here, and Jeff is the owner and artistic director of Westside Improv Studio in Wheaton, Illinois. He's an alumnus of the Second City in Hollywood. He's performed and taught improv all around the globe. And Jeff is also a professional sales and leadership coach, where he combines professional coaching with humor and authenticity, helping people succeed while making them laugh all along. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Clay.
Nice to see you, man.
How are you?
I'm fabulous. I'm so excited for this conversation. Jeff, I wanted you on the show for a few reasons. Well, first of all, I had the great fortune of being a student of yours this past quarter at the studio, and it was so fun. And I think I've dabbled in improv over many, many years. I've worked with a whole lot of teachers. I'm certainly no expert or veteran improver, but I've been with enough instructors to know that you are really good at what you do. You are my favorite instructor of all the different instructors that I've been with. And I'm just so excited to talk with you for a few reasons. First, you're a business owner. And this show, I have business owners on and C-suite executives and founders, et cetera, et cetera. So you check that box. But I think even more importantly than that, you deal in the improv business. And this show is about fear. And if you were to ask 10 people on the street, 9 people of those 10 would tell you that they'd be terrified to do improv. And so this is going to be a really fun conversation. I think you're going to bring a really interesting point of view to our show. And not only that, but you also work with sales executives and business executives. And this is a businessy type show. So I'm so excited about it.
Awesome. Well, first, thanks for the compliment. I love teaching, man. I just love it. I love going through the process and seeing people grow and stretch themselves. And, I love having fun while we're doing it. So I appreciate that. That's cool. You can say that anytime.
I will. I'll say it a couple more times. As long as you reciprocate and say some nice things about me, then we're good.
No, we'll see. We'll see.
All right. Well, so here's the deal. So, Jeff, you have built a life doing something most people find terrifying. And when I think about improv, failure is inevitable. And it's always around the corner. You're one shitty comment away of being rejected by your community. Maybe not so, but certainly being rejected by the audience. Mm-hmm. And so the question that I'm most interested in asking you is, I just would like for you to share a little bit about your pattern of masochism.
Yeah. Well, I have made many a shitty comment and lost many an audience in my lifetime. What's funny, Clay, like I was always, when it came to being in front of people, like even at a young age, I remember my grandparents would take me on these road trips when I was young, and they loved it because I would go talk to anybody. Like we would be in a restaurant, I'd see a table full of people that I was like, I want to go talk to them. And I would walk over and talk to them. And this was, when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And so it was always kind of in me to connect with people. And so I always felt very comfortable in front of people. With that said, like when I started doing comedy, improv and stand up in California, I think I realized the performance aspect of like what I naturally enjoyed doing, which was being in front of people and connecting with people. And then all of a sudden there's this invisible wall between us, right? And they've paid money and they're like, okay, entertain me. So that did create a little bit of fear in me at first, but I believe the fear kind of comes from our self-judgment. We're afraid that we're not going to be accepted or liked or laughed with or laughed at, right? So there are a lot of different things that come about. And so I just kind of stopped judging myself and saying, hey, it is what it is. I am who I am. Here I am. Take me or leave me. I'm okay.
So if you could bottle that,
yeah,
you'd be a zillionaire.
Right. and I'm not. So I haven't figured it out. I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing that you were able to just sort of like logically move beyond fear.
Yeah. Yeah, well, but it also took practice
Yeah,
too, right? Like, I
sure.
didn't just wake up one day and go, "Oh, I'm gonna be okay with myself, so I'm gonna run out and, perform." It took practice of being like, "Oh, no, it's cool." Like, this mindset I have of being okay with myself, accepting myself, and then being okay putting myself in front of people. There are also gonna be failures along the way, and, that's okay. That's part of the process. Like, I always say to my students, we should wanna struggle. That's where the growth is, right? I mean, we've read that in a million books and heard that in a bunch of TED Talks, I'm sure. But when you're really succeeding, when you're crushing it at anything, you're not learning anything. You might just be learning how to have ego, which doesn't ultimately help you. So
Yeah.
I love the aspect of struggling. So early on, I embraced the failure of improv and the struggle of improv and leaned into it because I knew I was getting better and I knew that I was getting more comfortable with the non judgment of myself.
Yeah. So I'm glad you share that because I wanted to ask next. I mean, improv is a voluntary sport. And even if you're into it or excited about it, you're going to be pretty scared the first time you get up on stage. Not the first time, the first hundreds of times, and maybe always. You maybe never really lose your fear. It probably keeps you sharp. But for anyone listening that is scared to even think about getting on stage and doing improv, not knowing what's next in front of an audience of people. Why do you suggest someone do that? What's the real upside in it?
Well, first, I would separate the concept of getting on stage with learning improv. So I have a show scheduled for every level of class that I offer. So there's a performance aspect that goes into it. And as you know, as level one progressed, we got ready for the show. But part of getting ready for the show is just doing the reps of what we've learned, right? So getting more and more comfortable with the simple things that we learned. So I would say as people, if anyone ever wanted to contemplate doing improv, they should probably separate the show aspect with the learning aspect. Let's go into the learning aspect first, which hopefully in any theater would be a safe space for people to come, be vulnerable, grow, learn about themselves, learn about each other, have fun, experience silliness and laughter. And that process, right, of time, whatever it is, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever a theater offers, that's the process that people should want to do with apprehension, maybe, but not with fear, only because they don't know what they don't know. So there shouldn't be fear doing that because there's no performance aspect associated with that. However, I always have a show at the end. People aren't required to do the show. I very rarely have people say, I'm not ready. I don't want to do the show. That doesn't happen too often.
Yeah. I think the analogy I use, if someone were to ask me the same question, when I watch you performing, and even when I watch the other students performing, it's sort of like an invitation to go back on the playground when you were six, where
Hmm.
you could be absolutely wild. And in fact, you have no choice but to be wild. And you're sort of, to be up there, you have to kind of let go of all of the mental models and structures that we put on ourselves as adults. It's just like a time warp back to childhood at some level, which for me is really exciting. I just love that opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I think like the formative years play is a really big thing, right? Pretend, play, let our minds grow, wander. That's a really, really big aspect of I think our foundation of who we are. And then all of a sudden we lose that. We get older, we stop doing that. You know, most people who hang on to it, they become musicians or writers or poets or actors or things where they can continue to build on that. But going back to that is just self discovery, is all it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I'm sure in different scenes, being different characters, having different moments, your inner self had some feelings. Your inner self was like, oh, this is fun, or I like this, or oh, that seems like a weird space for me. And we learn about ourselves. I think, we take an improv class for a bunch of 6 year olds on a playground and it's kind of fun being back there because anything goes.
Yeah. I love it. And I actually enjoy the fear, which I didn't always. And when I say that, it's like there's a rush. I mean, for sure, there's an adrenaline rush, and coming out the other side of that can be really exhilarating. So, For most people doing this, it's going to be scary. So, how do you help people kind of take the first step into this activity when they're kind of forced to be with their fear? Like, what's the secret sauce? Mike, you're really good at doing this. Not everyone's as good in my experience. So, how do you help them be with their fear to play ball?
Yeah, I think the first thing is probably getting everyone to sit in the realization that we're all here. We're all sort of facing the fear. We're not alone in it. This is a group project, you know. I think there were 22 people in your class, which is a big was a big class. That first thing that we always do, we stand in the circle. And the minute we stand in the circle and we're all looking at each other, we see a level playing field in a way. We're all okay, we're all here. And then I do an introduction, right? We go around, everybody just says their name. I give them exactly what to say so they can hear their voice in the room in front of people and not feel nervous and then know the next person is going to do the same, right? And then we do the dumb name game, you know?
Yeah.
Which is I'll lead it. Now you all do mine. Okay, cool. Now you all just moved and you did a thing. You don't have to come up with anything. Just follow the lead, right?
Mm,
And so I think we slow walk everyone into some commonality, which starts to remove fear because then we go, oh, cool. We're all just 6-year olds on the playground being silly now, right? I don't know. I think there's power in the numbers, you
I
know?
think so too. Yeah, I mean, my guess is most of the fear people experience in this life has to do with approval and feeling connected or disconnected from the community around them. In fact, if you get into the biology, the primal side of our fear, it's like, I'm going to be left behind. My tribe is going to kick me out. That's a death sentence. And so when you get a group of people together and we're all in this together, in fact, by taking a chance, I'm actually creating connection with people. I think that's probably what does it. And that's probably a really cool lesson for anyone. There's a lot of executives that may be listening to this. And I also want to talk with you about like public speaking and some of the activities executives do. It's like, doing that alone, way harder than doing that in community.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just keeps going, for me, it keeps going back to this concept of the self-judgment that we put on, right? And so we walk around with this like judgment all the time that says, I'm not good enough, or I'm not doing this right, or someone thinks I look funny, or I have food in my teeth, whatever it is. Right. So we have that judgment in our brain, and that really holds us back from exploring. Like when I work with leadership teams, I'm like, look, you can say all you want that you're open in the conference room, that you're open to feedback, that you're open. But like, let's be honest, we're all coming into this with some self-judgment that's preventing us from really being open and vulnerable and really having real conversations. And so my thing is always like, how do we drop that? How do we get on the same page? And I use yes and to build that, right? Because it's hard to hold on to your stuff too much when you're yes anding someone, when you're hearing them, you know?
Yeah. Got it. Yes, and right. And the whole idea of yes, and I mean, it's certainly not a new idea, but you're creating bridges off of someone else's earlier idea. So it's connective in nature. It's drawing you closer to another person. It's creating connection.
Yeah.
And the fear is about being left behind. So yeah, that's a really seems like that strategy doesn't surprise me why that strategy works. And it makes for good comedy.
It can. I've seen it
Yeah.
make bad comedy too.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the coaching you do, not all of it's in groups. I don't know. I mean, do you ever work with anyone like on public speaking or how to like get in front of a group of people? I mean, I know most of what you do is group stuff, but do you work one on
Yeah.
one with folks?
I do. Yeah. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. I do all kinds of different coaching. Right now, I'm working with a law firm, working with their attorneys to be better in the courtroom, better at presenting, better at commanding the courtroom and really listening. Right, there, listening is a dying skill in our society. Really fine tuning that stuff, and I just use a lot of improv techniques to come in and help people first it's like, all right, let's turn the light bulb on so that you can go, oh, here's where I'm not doing this. And then second, let's let's start building some skills and creating some new habits. So there's a lot of different ways that have helped people in the past, which I really enjoy. It's very fulfilling, especially when I see them do what it is they're trying to do, you
Yeah.
know.
So if I was to say, "Hey, Jeff, I got to go present in front of a room of 200 people, and
Hmm.
I'm terrified,"
Yeah.
what do you do with that person?
Yeah, I think, the first thing that I do is I would just work with them one on like feeling comfortable and present in their space. Work with them on, probably teach them a little bit how to address a room. I'd work with them on their content. There's a lot of different things. I think the first thing I would do was, you say I'm terrified. That can mean a lot of different things, right? So the first thing I would probably do is like, all right, let's talk about what terrified means to you. Why are you terrified? So I'd probably have to break that down and then
Yeah.
determine, okay, here's where we can get you over the fear of being in a room. One thing I was kind of notorious for a long time in California was, people would come to me a lot and they'd be like, hey, I'm the speaker for this event or that. Can you help me write an icebreaker? And so I'd write a joke, right? Or something. That's fine and dandy, but it doesn't necessarily, it might warm you up to the room, but you're still up there, in front of everyone. So it's really, let's find the fear. What is it? Why is it there? And then I'll help you either develop content or comfort in the room or techniques to address the room with confidence. There's a lot of different ways I would go with that.
Yeah. I think what I have as much fear as anyone has, and one of the things that's really helped me is I do what I can to use it. Like
Hmm.
whenever I'm sitting there terrorized or I used to be really terrorized. I'm less so now, but I've always subscribed to this idea that if you shine a light on your fear, if you out yourself,
Hmm.
the power of that fear diminishes. I remember once I spoke at Northwestern and I don't know what was going on in my life. This is a long time ago, but I was just I was sitting in my car beforehand, just panicking. And I went in, I went into the room and I'm like, there's bleacher seating, all these brilliant MBAs. And I'm like, if you would all know me right now, you would know that I am fucking scared out of my mind to be up in front of you right now. How many of you are scared? How many of you are scared to be in your seats in this crazy MBA environment, super competitive? And like that's been my out. And I imagine even in improv, it's like I know I remember you saying this. It's like, and I've seen you do it. You kind of almost check in and like whatever energy is here, you let that lead your decisions. Like, what role do I play in this scene? Like, what's here now that I can leverage?
Yeah.
I think you're quite masterful at that. I don't know if you think about that around fear or not, but I kind of connect those dots.
Yeah. I don't know if I specifically link it to fear, like as I'm teaching it or talking about it, but I think it does have a good connection to it for sure. I don't know what it is. I don't get nervous for anything ever. The one thing that can happen sometimes that can remind me, oh, I'm in front of people, and this is probably a response to a little bit of anxiety. Sometimes my mouth will get dry when I'm public speaking.
Mhm.
That's probably the thing that reminds me, hey, by the way, there's 1,000 people staring at you, right? And listening to you. So I've noticed that a little bit because I've done a lot of speaking over the last 3, 4 years. And I've noticed once in a while, depending on the room, like I never feel nervous when I walk up there. I never feel fear. I never feel anxiety. I'm like, give me a microphone. Let's go. Let's do this. I'm fired up. But usually about 2 to 3 minutes in, I'm like, oh, my mouth is a little dry. I think that's my body reminding me of like, hey, you might want to pay attention because this is a bigger deal than you're giving it, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
um, that might be my fear coming out, or like how I process fear. But and I think it's you said something about leaning into fear, which I love because like anything we do in life, repetition is going to make us stronger. So if you want to you know, be physically stronger, you've got to do the repetition of working out and building muscle and endurance. You've got to run, right? Whatever it is. So I think facing your fear with repetition makes you much stronger in the face of fear. And actually, that's how you kind of slay that dragon, right? So I work a lot with my clients who are in sales on that very concept because sale they've got to call people, they may have to cold call, they've got to walk into a networking meeting where they don't know anyone, they've got to try to walk up and build rapport, and that can be intimidating. And I'm like, well, the more you do it, the easier it's going to become. The only way to slay the dragon is to face it. Like, you got to face the dragon before you can slay it. So I love the repetition of being in fear.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. The more we do it, just get comfortable. We know what to expect. The context is probably a little bit more certain, a little bit less uncertain as to what's going to happen. We've seen this movie before. We know we're not going to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about the sales thing. You work with a lot of sales folks. I've done my fair share of sales and business development in the past. And I know there's a zillion resources out there. I've read them, I've seen them, I've used some of them, different manuals, processes, tools to be an effective leader. In my estimation and in my experience, you can read all that shit you want. But the biggest hurdle is moving beyond my fear of rejection, my fear of looking salesy. At least that's been my experience, maybe not for everybody, but it's kind of the emotional piece. I know that when things have gone, when I've been in a less than optimal state in my life and I'm out selling, like energetically, I just know that can be felt across the table without me even saying anything. So you've already talked to, I've asked you, like, so how do you deal with that? But I wonder if you have a different answer or any other thoughts on for folks that may be in business development listening to this, aside from the tools and techniques around process, what's an effective way to deal with the fear of rejection and the typical idea that people don't like salespeople? How do you deal
Sure.
with that?
God, that's an in-depth question. I feel like I could answer that like an onion, let's just go layer by layer. One of the reasons why I have a career in helping people in sales is because we can consume everything. But at the end of the day, if we're out there in a silo on our own doing this stuff, we're going to fall back into our old patterns. And if avoidance is a pattern of putting yourself out there, right? You want to avoid it because you don't want to feel salesy or you don't want rejection. There's a lot of different things that come up. That's one of the reasons why I have a job, is because I provide the accountability, right? Which is like, hey, I'm following up with you. You said you were going to do ABC. How'd it go? Well, I didn't do it. Okay, cool. How's that helping you? We go into those conversations. So the accountability piece is big. So when I'm coaching someone, though, and facing and overcoming fear, a lot of it is just a mindset. And I think it's a realization that, hey, look, nobody's ever died from an introduction or a cold call, or um I have a business coach who's helped me over the years. I don't work with him now, but he's been great. He used to always say to me, he's like, if you cold call someone and they're the worst human being to you, and they're cussing and swearing and calling you every name in the book, and they slam the phone down, you could have dinner next to that person tonight and he wouldn't know who you were. So why does it matter to
Yeah.
you? Right. So I always try to work with my clients on mindset first.
Yeah.
We want to know our truth. Our truth is that we're not the salesy person that we fear. We're here for a purpose. We're here for, there's something good that we're bringing, that we're offering. These are conversations that are important. Once we get comfortable with the mindset, then it's just building confidence, which is doing something. So cool. You don't have to make 100 calls today. Go make one. All right. How'd that feel? Tomorrow you're going to make two, right? How'd that feel? And so we build confidence anchors based on the repetition of it. But honestly, like, I feel like it's with anything in life, mindset's huge. So when I do public speaking, I talk to a lot of leaders about using the yes of improv, which is not just a word, it's a posture. When we're a yes person, we're open, we're inviting, we have energy, it's positive energy, we connect. And so when we are a no person, that energy precedes us into any meeting. I talk to my attorneys about that. I'm like, when you're a no attorney, when you're a no trial attorney, everybody knows before you walk in that courtroom, and
Yeah.
you find yourself, you've set your brand. So let's start with a good mindset.
Man,
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, so yes and isn't a new idea. There's books written about it. I think it
I'm
it
writing a book about it.
are
Yeah, this I'm gonna be it's gonna be
Great.
another book on the heap, right? Yeah.
Great. Well, yours is going to be better than anyone else's.
Well, we'll see.
I'm
We'll
certain
see.
of. No, but the thing that I hope your book's about that I just picked up from what you just said that I love, I've never really thought about it or heard about it in this way. Yes, and isn't just a set of words to progress the scene or to progress the conversation. It's actually a way of being.
It's way of
That's a
being.
that's a big idea. And I don't, I haven't read all the yes and books in the world, but I've never, in all the reading I have done, I've never really conceptualized the idea of yes and as a posture. I love how you presented it as a posture. That's a big idea. What does it mean for, and that might be a really cool coaching question for someone. What does it look like for you to be a yes and guy in the room versus just simply saying yes and? What's energetically, what's like, what does it mean for you to show up as a yes and? I love that. Lots of times when I think about fear, I think about parenting and I think about, if you have a scared kid in bed saying, Mommy, Daddy, there's a monster under my bed, one fairly reasonable thing to do is get on the floor with them, take a flashlight out and show them that there's no monster there. It's like, is it true? So, people intellect or emotionally are thinking, oh my God, if this goes poorly, then what? And most all that mind trash is not true. So I love you kind of bringing, identifying what's the worst thing that'll happen. And there's no death ahead. You'll just go on with your day. And I think that's really effective, really helpful for people.
Yeah, you'll get over it. I think I had a client a few years ago who was struggling to build his business. I mean, he was doing fine. He had a good business, but he knew he needed to bring new revenue in and needed new relationships and new clients. And so I just asked the question. I'm like, well, how do you do it? What's the best way to do it? Of course, I coach heavy on let's get good at accessing our friends and fans and get referrals. And so we definitely did that. But in parallel, he was like, I need to make cold calls. I just need to. Like, I need to contact new companies. I need to talk to them. He's like, I hate it. And so I actually helped him develop a character that was, him adjacent. Right. And I said, look, you're not making the cold calls. Your character's making these cold calls. So when someone is difficult because you're making a cold call, let your like unleash your character.
Yeah.
Let them have some fun. And it was crazy. I don't know what happened, where it came from. I was just like sitting there and I'm like, when I'm a character on stage, like I'm pretty fearless. And I was like, let's create a character for this guy. And he loved this concept and he started to be kind of like a cold call machine. And really he kicked his business into a whole different gear. And every once in a while, I'll get a text from him. It'll be like, yeah, Jeff, man, he's like, I got a new character making calls. And I'm like, that's amazing. I love it. So I think there's a lot of ways to game it. But at the end of the day, it's really just about letting go of this judgment, just who cares? Let's let go of the judgment. We don't need it. It's not going to help us. And of course, when you're playing a character, you don't have self judgment on that character because it's a character. Who
Yeah.
cares what happens to the character, right?
Yeah.
So,
I think that's gold. I think that is, and it could be so fun. You could ham it up. Like you can name your character. Like I'm Jocko. That's
yeah,
my cold calling persona, and like have some fun with it. Oh my gosh, I
yeah,
love that.
right. Well, he actually said that. It was funny. He's like, well, I could call me this. And I'm like, yeah, but don't forget, if this is a successful call, you're going to have to do business with this guy. And you're going to be like, well, look, my real name isn't Jocko. It's Brand or whatever.
No, got
So,
it. Yeah,
but
right.
yeah, what I love about improv too is, look, we have fun. We learn how to not take every moment so seriously. And once we're in a space where we feel comfortable and we're able to laugh at the variables and the frustrations of the unknown, we perform better. We perform better. But when we're not taking things so seriously and we're not all bound up with like fear and emotion, we're better people. We're better at everything we do. So I love that training about improv too, where it's like, lighten up, Francis. Life is not that serious. Let's just go have some fun,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. So I have an observation that I've seen, and I was reminded of this in some of the classes that I was in with you recently, but also I've seen it in the boardroom for years, where people are terrified of pauses and silence. Like everyone is quick to like it's, oh my gosh, it's uncomfortable. I gotta say something to fill in this void. And usually, in my experience, both in the boardroom, that usually leads to shitty business decisions. On stage, my observation is that leads to shitty scenes and shitty ideas. Like there's no space to marinate and kind of connect with the person before you move together in connection with whatever idea comes next. I'm kind of curious, why do you sense people are so quick to jump to something? And by the way, I'm curious if you see that too. I mean, is that a theme or do you see that as well?
Yeah, I see that. People over talk all the time. I think there's just yeah, there's this idea that silence is not your friend. So one example that I'll give you is, we talk about like, let's talk about sales as an example. Like it's pretty common that a salesperson will talk at their prospects or their clients, right? They'll talk past the buying line. People are afraid to listen. I think that's what it boils down to. And I think the most important aspect of communication is listening. And so when I think about coaching salespeople, we talk a lot about finding someone's pain point. Like, look, if someone doesn't need what you're selling, then don't sell it to them, you know? But if they need it, well, why do they need it? You know, in their words, not your assumption, but in their words, why do they need it? So, in order to understand that, we've got to ask the right questions, and then we have to listen, and we have to pause when they have determined that they need this. And so, I'm really aware of the rhythm of my language when I speak. And so, like, the rhythm of it is, look, if I'm here to make a point, then I need to be quiet and let that point sit out there, because if I talk, the point will leave. And I think when you talk about being in doing a presentation in a conference room, or being a leader of an organization making decisions, man, you've gotta let the point marinate. You just have to. You got to get comfortable with silence. So I do coach people a lot on getting comfortable with silence. I do a lot of role playing calls where I'd be like, with my sales clients, I'll be like, hey, I'm your client next week. You're going to call me. I'm not your coach. You can use my name, but that's all you know about me. And we're going to practice the rhythm of your talk. We're going to practice when you find my pain, how you're going to be quiet. You're going to shut up. Let's let it marinate. Let's connect. You know, I think it's, I don't know, fear. We're talking about fear. It's fear. It's fear of silence. It's fear of connection. It's fear of listening, vulnerability. If you and I sit here silent for the next, minute, there's going to be a fear that's going to creep up. That's going to go millions of listeners. Cause I think you have like 7 or 18
I think we're
million.
up to 9 million, Jeff. Thank you, though.
Nine. Okay. Well, I'm sorry to
It's nine
exaggerate, but
million.
my,
Keep going.
that was my first compliment to you.
That wasn't a compliment. That was
But
just a
you're
fact.
going to, this is fact,
It's
factual.
just a fact. If you want to compliment me, you can compliment me. But go ahead and continue with what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, you're so good. I thought it was 17 or 18 million. So
Hey,
that's the compliment. Yes. But that's the thing. Like if we sat here silent for a minute, you would be like, "Ooh, my listeners or my watcher, are they bored with, these thoughts that come into your mind?" You have to be okay that you have to be like, "Cool, be bored. We're going to be quiet because we need a point to marinate."
actually, so want to do
I
this
don't know
with
if
you
I'm
right now.
answering your question, but I did just have an amazing ramble.
That's great. You're just no. It was a good answer. And now all I want to do is sit here in silence for a minute and see what happens.
Let's do it.
Too scary. Oh, here you go. You're doing it. No, honestly, I could for sure do it. And the only reason I don't want to do it is because I've got more questions for you, and I want to know more about your point of view and a few things.
And my fear of answering your questions is making me want to sit in silence to avoid it. So,
That's a great strategy, Jeff. So that's why we should sit in
yeah,
silence
that's
more.
good.
So we don't put ourselves out there to be wrong about something. Maybe that's why we should shut up more. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
right.
That's a good strategy. I hope people pick up on that. All right. So yeah,
Yeah.
the rest of these questions, I want to kind of talk more about you. you and your
Yeah, let's
experience.
do
You've
it.
already shared a little bit about it, and I'm so angry at you. I'm like, how does someone grow up in the world and just I mean, you said you weren't always like this completely, but I'm just never nervous. I'm never scared. I just get up and grab the mic and it's go time. I mean, it's like, my gosh, so many people must be envious of you. And that's what a cool like reality that you have. And I'm kind of curious, you shared a little bit about this, but I know repetition has helped you get there. And I know practice and putting the microphone in your hand and getting up on stage over and over has helped you. But I am curious if there's anything more you want to say about how your relationship with fear has changed from your early days of performing to now.
My relationship with fear. Well, that's a really good question.
I got lots of them, Jeff.
Good. Well, it's interesting. It's been a long time since I've had fear or anxiety about performing. So it's hard for me to answer that question because I don't have a fear that I can connect with. So how does my relationship with fear in that world change? I don't really know how to answer that. But I will tell you that I think my relationship with fear has been impacted by confidence. And I'll tell you this, when I opened this theater 11, little over 11 years ago, I didn't have any fears about opening because it was such a low risk thing. It was a small space. I didn't, there's not much of a financial commitment. So I was fine. I was like, if it fails, it fails. Nobody knows me. Don't care. I'll move on. Today there's a lot of anxiety I carry because it's a bigger operation. I mean, I went from 700 square foot theater to about 6,000 square feet of space. I've got hundreds of students now. I've almost 100 performers. I have some fear now. I walk around with some fear, right? Because
Yeah.
every decision I make doesn't just impact me, it impacts this whole community. However, I'm pretty confident in my ability to run this place. Like I know what works. I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of confidence in that. I think tends to, like I always say, slay the dragon. That slays the fear dragon a little bit. Is my confidence in my ability to run it because I've built that. I've built that over time. So I think my relationship with fear now is I understand fear to be sort of like an annoying sibling that is hanging around trying to get my attention. But I also know that I have power to ignore that sibling or, lock him in a closet or whatever you would do to a sibling. So like I think it's a lot of it's just based in confidence. Again, I mean, I hate to be repetitive by talking about repetition, but I've run this business for 11 years and gotten here. I know how to do it. If it fails, it's probably because of me. So if as long as I make the right decisions and do the right things, I shouldn't be scared. I should not fear.
Yeah. Okay. So this is fun. So we've talked a lot about how improv can be a process in which to navigate fear in business. And so, what would the persona that lives within you, who is the master improviser, what advice would he have for the scared business owner that now has 6,000 square feet?
That's a good question. I think I shared this with your class at one time. I go back to a Del Close quote, which I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes is fall and figure out what to do on the way down.
It's such a
Right.
good one.
So yeah, the reality, we're all equipped with the skills and ability to figure it out. We're all equipped with that. We might not have the experience yet, but sometimes the ability to figure it out is leaning into your relationships or like when you're in a scene, lean into your scene partner. I teach the rocks, right? So lean into a rock. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, you got to take a class. So sign up for a class and then you'll know. Otherwise, this means nothing to you. That's my plug. I'm putting my plug in.
Great job, Jeff.
Thank you. So leaning in, I think is big. Look, I have confidence that everyone can figure out whatever they want in their life. And I think that it takes a little bit of discernment, like what do I need in this moment? How do I do it? I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to research. I'm going to put the time in, fall and figure out what to do on the way down. My improviser self would say, dude, do you have some fear in business? Well, first create motion, fall, and then figure out what to do on the way down. I'll do that sometimes when I schedule classes or new shows here, or new things, or I tackle new things. I'm like, you know what? I'll put it out there and I'm going to figure it out. I feel like I'm staying true to my improviser self, and it's worked so far somehow. Somehow I've managed so far.
I really believe we're all products of our past. As much as you're willing to share, I'm just sort of curious, like, how did you learn to trust in that way? I mean, I know you have learned to trust through experience, but this idea of falling and learning, was that sort of like an accepted culture that you grew up in?
No, oddly enough, no. I think hopefully my therapist won't watch this. I think that I was caught between two weird worlds of like, I had one side of my family that was a little bit, I was an only child. So they were a little overzealous about what Jeffy, as they called me, could accomplish in life. You could do anything. You're the greatest kid in the world, which is probably the thing that gave me confidence at
Sure.
7 years old, up to a table full of strangers and be like, hey, I'm going to entertain you. And then there was another side of my family that was like, you're never going to amount to anything, right? We probably all had someone in our life that was like that. And so I
Yeah.
was caught between these two worlds. I think it confused me a lot throughout my life as to like, ooh, what is my value? But when I learned that I could entertain people, that people were entertained by me, and that I was able to captivate people, I leaned into that. And I think, for me, a lot of it started with music. I did a lot of music. And then I moved to the stage. And so that was my journey. But, I think like once I learned to sort of captivate people, I think that's when I got in touch with the side that was like, you can do anything. And I was like, wow, I can captivate people. Like I can entertain people. I can engage a room full of people. And that helped my journey a lot. I think it made me say, I'm not afraid to do that because I'm pretty good at it.
You know, it's funny, the coach in me, I it's a bullshit game I play with myself around seeming valuable in the world. It's like I love it when like a client like breaks down and there's like some like, deep-seated fear that comes out. And I'm just like, this fucking guy Jeff, like he's just rock solid. This isn't any fun for me. I'm just kidding. I'm having a ton of fun with you. Uh, can you cry, please? I mean, you're an improviser. That'd be great for me. That would just really help me in my identity as a podcast host. That'd be terrific if you could. Listen, I imagine your students, everyone in the audience, they kind of see you as this fearless guy. And we've heard a lot about you really not having a whole lot of fear being up on stage. I'm curious if there's anything your students would be surprised to learn, like an insecurity or fear around that still runs you. Is there anything left? Maybe the answer is no.
No. Oh, there's a ton.
Uh,
There's a ton.
Okay.
Everything creeps up, imposter syndrome,
Really?
right?
Okay.
Oh, sure. Oh, goodness. I was the keynote speaker about a year ago in Florida or Austin, someplace. I don't even know. Big group, 1,200 people, 1,400 people or so in the audience. And the person who spoke before me was like New York Times bestseller, blah, 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 and I'm like, and welcome Jeff Ash, Westside Improv. And I was a kid. I mean, she had 40 minutes. I had 75, and I was like the keynote. I remember walking up on the stage and going, let's do this. And then going, am I an imposter here? Like, I think I have some good things to say, but man, should
Okay.
I be following I have that a lot. I think one thing I love about improv is it's extremely humbling because the minute I feel like I'm good at it, it will smack you down. And you'll have a bad show. And improv's like tapping you on the shoulder, going, hey, remember me? I'm like hard to do. So don't get too confident. So I mean, look, I I'm never nervous. I don't have fear to get on stage, but I am aware that, man, I'm doing this thing that you never perfect, right? You don't ever arrive. You're always in process. Improv is a process. It's not, there's no end goal here. And so I'm also very aware that, look, I'm just Jeff, you know, in a room full of 12 14, 2,000 people. Like I think I did a 2,000 person talk. I'm just Jeff, man. Hopefully I can connect with these people and I feel confident that I will. But at the end of the day, like, I have a little imposter syndrome. I hope my teaching connects, but I worry. I'm like, oh, I don't know, you know, things that come up in class. Do I address it right? I mean, yeah, I have all that. I have all that. I just don't let it control me.
Interesting.
You know?
How? Like, I mean, imposter syndrome is something most people have at some level, and you don't let it control you, which I love. Is there, and I've asked you a little bit before, what do you do with someone that's scared? Well, is there a different answer? Is there a strategy? Is there some way, like, how do you not let it control you?
Yeah. I feel like I'm serving my purpose.
So it's just reminding yourself of that. Is that what it is?
Yeah. I've done corporate trainings or speaking where, I come off the stage and then there's a break and there's a line of like 30 people waiting to talk to me and it feels good. My ego feels awesome. And then I've done those where there's one person who comes up to me and talks to me, right? And I think that one person is in a weird way more important than the 30 because I'm like, I'm here. My purpose in my life, I really believe, is to bring this concept, this art form to people in a way that's going to help them navigate the world better. Whether it's their, you know, department at work or their corporate training or whether it's their relationships with people or like I believe it helps people and I'm just this vessel, right, that brings it out. And my purpose is that. And so if I serve my purpose and I do it humbly, there's nothing to be afraid of. There's
Yeah.
nothing to be afraid of.
I think it's a really cool insight. I think people need to take a little bit more time and remember, why am I doing this? What is the gift I have for the world? What is the gift I have for this audience? I mean, I think that's an awesome strategy and really helpful for me in
Yeah.
my own experience.
I think there's a saying that I've always liked, Clay, that is it's hard to be nervous when your heart's on service, right? And
Man, you're full of these
when I
one-liners today.
yeah,
Good. Keep going.
that's one of the things I coach my sales clients on. I'm like, "Look, why are you here? Yeah, you're selling something, but what you're doing is valuable. So why are you nervous?" You know? I hear this said a lot around, my sphere of coaches. And so someone probably wrote it in a book and I'm not crediting them. So sorry for whoever that is. But it's just something that stuck with me that I've always liked. And I'm like, look, I'm here to serve. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm not nervous, but I still have all the feels that people have, you know, every
I mean,
single one.
I think that's super powerful, especially in a sales context, because salespeople oftentimes make it all about them and not the other person. It's like, well, hold on a minute. If it's not about me getting the sale, but it's more about me supporting someone to achieve whatever they need to achieve energetically, all of a sudden that's a different experience. So that's a really cool one. I like that a lot.
Yeah, man. Like, cool. Whatever you're selling, it's like if you treat it as a service to the person, like you'll probably find that you don't want to sell to this person. It's not in service to them. And that's okay too.
Yeah. Maybe we should just get rid of the whole word sales and just replace it with serve. Like, I'm a service person, which is really, I imagine, if you kind of like if you embody the idea of yes and not just say it, if you embody the idea of being a service person and not a salesperson, I imagine you get very different results. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think about that too a lot, Clay, with people like the skill of sales comes in asking questions and listening and finding out what's important to people, right?
Yeah.
That's what's really the big deal. That's service. But if you're going to just tell someone about your product, that's
Yeah.
sales.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jeff, we are rounding third base and heading home here. I have a couple of questions I ask everyone on the show, so I'm going to ask those real quick. Here's the first one. If you could whisper one truth into every leader's ear, what would it be?
People matter.
Next question. What truth helps the giant in you rise up when fear drags you down or when imposter syndrome drags you down?
Yeah. The truth is I'm here not for me, but for someone else.
I love it. That's awesome. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up? Or something you like to pitch? And please do pitch Westside Improv. I'll pitch Westside Improv. It's just an incredible community and I just love it there.
Thanks. No, I'm grateful you had me on. Thank you. This is really fun to talk about. I think you asked me some questions I probably haven't given a lot of thought to. So putting words around them, I was improvising. Hopefully it made sense. Otherwise, I'm not a good improviser. But no, this is awesome, man. And good to know you over the last few months. And I know you're going to be around more. So yeah, which is cool, which is good for us.
If people want to learn more about you or Westside, where do you want to point them?
Yeah, just go to westsideimprov.com. The website has a lot of great information. I'm a one-man show, so, if you email through the website at contact@westsideimprov.com, come straight to me. And, yeah, man, I love to serve. So I show up for organizations. I can, love to have people come in, and I think it's people have probably figured out, I think improv's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think so too. I can't wait to go back, and I will be back this spring. I promise. And I'm going to do some of
Love it.
those open team things that are once a month too. I'm going to come back and do some of those. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. This was energizing for me, super fun for me. And folks, I hope you enjoyed it. And please follow the show and join me, Clay Stelzer, each week as we stop pretending, we name our fears, and we remember what it takes to stand tall as the giants we already are. So when leaders get real, they make it safe for others to do the same. So please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and help more people feel what's possible when fear doesn't run the show. Thanks so much.